Okay, so a student plans a method to prepare pure crystals of copper sulfate. The student's method is, okay, add 1 spatula of calcium carbonate to dilute hydrochloric acid in a beaker. When the fizzing stops, heat the solution with a Bunsen burner until all the liquid is gone. Okay, the method contains several errors and does not produce copper sulfate crystals. Explain the improvements the student should make to the methods so that pure crystals of copper sulfate are produced. Okay, so we know that the method contains errors and it does not produce copper sulfate crystals. Okay, explain, remember, is a describe plus. So every case I'm going to, and it's worth 6 marks, so I'm going to need at least 3 different things that I name that I'm going to improve, and I'm going to have to say why that is. Okay, so 6 bullet points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the first thing is, in fact I might move that one just to use the top row to just check what this reaction happens. So it doesn't produce copper sulfate. So what do I need to produce copper sulfate? Well, I need some sort of copper something to start with, copper something, plus to make sulfate I'm going to need sulfuric acid, and that will turn into copper sulfate, plus, so what we normally use here is a salt of some sort, so calcium carbonate. Okay, well that's fine. We could use, but you're not going to be able to use calcium carbonate, that's going to be no good, and also hydrochloric acid's no good, so we can change that straight away. So copper, if we do a copper carbonate, would be fine. Copper carbonate plus sulfuric acid turns to copper sulfate, and this would be plus carbon dioxide plus water. Okay, if you wanted to do copper oxide, then that would get rid of the carbon dioxide, you just have copper sulfate and water. So the first thing I'm going to say is, student, they need to use, so explain the improvements. So use sulfuric acid, not hydrochloric acid. Okay, so use sulfuric acid using hydrochloric acid because sulfuric acid makes sulfate salts. Okay, so next one, use copper carbonate, not calcium carbonate. Okay, so they need that. So at the moment there was no copper present before. What else do they need to do? Well, they're going to add 1 spatula. That seems a little bit stingy. So add more copper carbonate. So really what you want to do is you want to add so much that the reaction, you can't produce any more copper salt. So add more copper carbonate. Keep adding until no more will react. Okay, so once that's done, then this is no more will react. This means you've used all of the acid. This means all the acid has reacted. what else could we do? Well, the fizzing stops, heat the solution. Okay, so then we're going to have to filter out to get rid of this, aren't we? So filter out any remaining copper carbonate. Okay, and you could, using filter paper and funnel. And then we're going to we've then go, so we've got that, we've filtered it out. I'm just trying to think what we've done. So we've got a container, we've got the acid, we put loads of copper, the correct salt in there. We've then filtered it to remove anything that's left. Okay, there's our filter. So we've got the copper sulfate that's dissolved. Next we're going to heat it gently. Heat the copper sulfate and water. Gently, so that the water evaporates. Okay, you're certainly not going to heat it. You're not going to keep going. Oops. You're not going to keep going with the Bunsen burner. Heat the copper sulfate and water gently so that the water evaporates, and then at that point you're going to be left with crystals. Which you can then dry. So finally, when almost dry, use paper towels to dry crystals. Often there'll be crystals of copper sulfate. Okay, so they don't add that either. They could also add the fact that, you could say here, make sure that they use safety goggles. So they've got to wear safety goggles. Take care with acid. Use tongs for hot equipment. They've not mentioned any of the safety things at all in their sorry, I keep disappearing off the page. They've not mentioned any of the safety issues in their method at all, and they're all things you could improve. Okay, so I've got 7 things there in total. To get the top marks for this one, to get the full 6 marks, you have to have named the acid. So you can't just say use a different acid or use a different substance. You have to have named the sulfuric acid and a copper salt. So you could have said copper carbonate, copper oxide. They'd be fine, either of those.